Prashant, very excited to have you here on our Business Munchies podcast. We'll do this slightly differently because cohort based courses are the flavor of the season, and you've launched one and you're doing really well with the Build Cohort course. I want to start there, understanding what you're doing there, and it's very relevant to what we do at Business Munchies. We just talk about side hustles, side projects, business ideas, and stuff like that. So this is a cohort specifically to help people build side projects. Tell me a little about the cohort, but before you do that, how did you land up here? What was the journey to get to build cohort?
Thank you so much, first of all, Siddharth and Sahil. It's an absolute pleasure to be talking to you guys, and also, for the listeners who are listening to this. So, coming to your question, right? What led to build? Obviously, there's so much of action and so much of like halla, so to say, around cohort-based courses right now. Everybody seems to be either doing a CBC or running a CBC, right? Actually, when I started this, I didn't even if you go to the website right now, you will see the word cohort-based actually used only at one place, and I'll come to why I do that and why I have a strong thesis or a belief system around where this is all headed, right? Now, what led me to this, to your question, right? So I have been in education. This is actually my fifth year in education, right? And my first stint with education was when I was leading growth for Udacity in India, and this was in the year 2015 and 2016. So I spent like a year there, did a whole bunch of stuff, to figure out how should Udacity acquire specifically the student segment in India, because that is what their target was. So develop some understanding of education. And by the way, my journey, if as we talk about, you will realize that it has actually panned the three evolutions of education. So it started with Udacity, right, which was the first evolution of online education, which is like all of these Udacity, Coursera, edX, Udemy, etc., where you take the courses, put it out there. There's no kind of community, etc., in it. So I was involved there. Then in 2018, I actually started the India business of something called Springboard, which is again a US based online education, but that is on the bootcamp model, right? Now, the bootcamp model was the second evolution of online learning, and that is where a lot of people, a lot of listeners would have heard of something like a Lambda School or a Pesto, right? Because that revolution came where people are like, okay, we'll run a boot camp for 3 months, 6 months, right? And then boot camp is primarily like, okay, we'll get you to an outcome, and that outcome most of the time happens to be a job, right? So I spent like 3 years at Springboard. I set up the India business, went from like single person to 40 people team. Eventually I was heading both sales and growth. Now that was the deepest and the most like satisfying experience when it, and also the most insightful experience that I actually had when it comes to education. It taught me, what works, what are the actual problems in the space, what kind of companies can scale when it comes to education, what is obviously happening, and where is the future going, right? Then when I moved on from Springboard, and that's where I was talking to several different people in the space. Again, in education, this was in December 2020 and January February 21. So I was talking to a bunch of entrepreneurs in India, outside of India, trying to understand what they are doing, and also seeing where do I really want to go next. It so happened that I just landed up at On Deck because my conversation had started with them. Uh, but I didn't really spend a lot of time at On Deck. I can come to that reason if you want, but let's leave that. Now, what it ended up doing is, because I spent a considerably less time at On Deck and a very deep time at Springboard, when I moved out of On Deck, I was pretty clear that there is a model that I would like to experiment with. Right now, that model is like an overlap of a boot camp plus all of these CBCs, right, which you hear. And I always had this thing because I was since 2017 18 I was also doing things on the side or side projects. I was like, okay, I want to enable more and more people to actually build and launch side projects. So I kind of combined the bootcamp model and the CPC model and put it as something called Build. Launched it in, worked on it in July, launched it in August, went bonkers. Yeah, we can talk about that later. But yeah, this is how it actually all panned out.
What are the salient features of a bootcamp and a CBC model that you combine? Like, what features did you pick from the board to combine and create build?
Yeah, very interesting. So the number one thing that we spoke about bootcamp, right? The bootcamp's primary promise is an outcome. If you look at CBCs, a lot of CBCs right now, they are actually defined as, okay, we'll start at the same same time, will end at the same time, and the community will be the main offering, but they are not necessarily talking about an outcome. Okay, now at Build we are saying that you actually go to the page right now, you'll see it says build and launch side projects, right? Which is like you cannot end this cohort by not launching a side project, right? Which is a very concrete measurable outcome to have. And then, so that is from the bootcamp model. Second, CBCs, because CBCs thrive on a few things, right? One is everybody starts at the same time, ends at the same time, but most importantly there is two three things happening. There's sync learning and async learning, which is live learning, and a lot of async discussions happening. And async is where you kind of make community your moat, right? So these things we have actually picked from the cohort model and put it into Build.
So, Prashant, first of all, cohort based courses and the whole bootcamp model are nothing new. They existed even before the entire internet era. In fact, all the tuitions that all of us went to when we were kids, you could call them cohort based courses,
Cohort
right?
based courses, yeah.
Exactly. My physics cohort based course for 10th standard and all that. And obviously, boot camps have been there for a long time. I met somebody who started a Microsoft boot camp back in the 90s, and he made
Yeah,
a lot of money with those kind of boot camps. But now the internet era has come in, and it has allowed for these boot camps and these cohort based courses to operate at a much better level. And like you're saying, making community a moat. At that
yeah,
time, the ability to make community a moat was just not possible.
correct.
Now, from what I understand and from what I've seen also of your community, is that you're using the internet to enable that community to grow and flourish really well. And that's becoming a marketing tool for you as well. Because
Yeah,
one of the questions I always ask whoever, whichever entrepreneur comes on who has a core based course, is how are
how do
you
you scale?
driving? Yeah, how are you driving more people into the business? Because at one point you're going to reach a finality of how many people want to join. And I can see you're using. Oh, I like the nod. Uh, I can see that you are using community for that. You're using community effectively. So, what is that secret sauce? I don't know if that nod implied that you will not give me the secret sauce, but what is that secret sauce?
Yeah, that actually the nod actually didn't apply. Didn't say that I will not give an answer. The nod was because I had written a thread which was actually extremely well received. I had written this like 3 months back on Twitter around education, and one of the things that I kind of wrote there was fundamentally CBCs are designed to not scale, right? Like, because if you look at the people who are running CBCs, they are people who have audience. Now, even if you have an audience, mostly CBCs are being run by people who have an audience. Even if you have an audience, what, you can fill one cohort, three cohorts, right, with your audience. But how the hell will you go forward if you want to, right, beyond that? What, and this is what I had written on, which is like, and that is why I'm not a very strong believer that you should run, let's say, CBC as a startup. As a person, you should not necessarily do it as a startup. If you're doing it as a side project, perfect, fantastic, great revenues, great to build all of these, relationships and network, and to most importantly help other people win in their lives, right? Now, coming to your question, obviously we are doing a lot when it comes to, how do we when it comes to the things that we do inside the community. So let's talk about that first. What happens is you will see a lot of communities in places like Discord, Slack, blah 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 blah, right? But the thing is, communities tend to kind of take pride on the number of people who are there in the community, right? Since the time we have started, we have said that numbers doesn't matter, right? What matters is there a place where, is this a place where people who join feel like they joined a family and became a part of a family, right? And they should, they should respect each other, they should be willing to go out of their way to help each other, they should always, no matter what, put up their hands to, like, get help, ask for help, just do anything to help, keep helping. Now what happens is we actually do this in a very strong manner when the cohort starts, right? Like, this is actually, so we have, everybody in the community has actually read a community of values guideline. Now imagine, usually companies tend to have value guidelines, right? Okay, these are the values. We actually have value guidelines for the community, where the first one is, everybody should be, like, you should be respectful and dignified at all times. One of them, and the most important one, is you do whatever it takes to help each other win, right? Now what happens is, when you build this community on these philosophies and values, because the people will keep getting a lot of value on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. There's a natural way that people will start talking about it, right? So we don't actually use the word that we are using the community, but what happens is, because of the way it is structured, because we have kind of, you know, put this into the minds of every single builder, that you will succeed only when other people succeed. There is no way you can be selfish in a community where you try to be a taker and not a giver and feel that you can be successful in life. That, you know, go and talk to any builder inside the community, they'll tell you that yeah, we know this and that is why we are here. Now once that is there, when we do all of these sessions and master classes, etc., they naturally start. We have never told people to go and make noise, right? Obviously we say that, you know, if you like, etc., you can talk, but it's not like, okay, let go on Twitter, start making noise. We don't do that, right? It's very organic. They feel that they are getting value, and because, you know, everybody is behaving like that, now the more people who will come into the system, more people would behave like that, and this just sets up a loop. I
I
hope
just
that
want to
answered your question. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it answered my question about how you built a good community because, and actually, I think I'm going to pick your brain after this as well because I think you have built a fantastic community. Prashant invited us to join the community last night, and I've just been part of it for less than 24 hours, and I've already had two offline conversations with people. We had
Yeah.
like half an hour, 45-minute chats. And it was really interesting. And these guys are very open. They're very open to having chats. They're very open to ask me questions. And that was what the chats were about. I love the kind of community you've built. I've tried to do it in the past, and I've realized how tough it is.
Yeah.
Being a community manager is really, really tough. Getting people to open up is really tough. Getting people to share is really tough. Maybe we can talk about it a bit at the end. But yeah, Siddharth, do you have a question?
Yeah, one of the things that's very interesting is you bring a mix of people. You bring in people who with dev experience, you bring in people with business functional experience. You help them sort of team up together. Throw some light
Yes.
on how do you figure out the mix of a particular cohort, because I think that's a unique strength, and that's a common challenge that people go through. Devs are like, what do I build? People with business knowledge are like, who do I build this with? And you're sort of solving that with the cohort.
I'm so glad that you asked that question, Siddharth, because there's a lot of noise around. There's a lot of noise that, okay, build with no code, build with this, build side projects with no code. I absolutely love that. Love that. Kind of phenomenon that is going around. But right, I've been very, very, very intentional. We have been very intentional about the fact that within the build community, we will ensure that there are, most of the time you will see that there are 50% developers, 50% non-developers. Within the 50% non-developers, there are designers, copywriters, marketers, sales, everything else. I like very intentional. So when we are kind of deciding who should get in and receive the next steps to get into the cohort, we actually select, okay, this is a developer, send an email. This is a marketer, send an email. Because to maintain that. Now, why do we do that, right? Because if you think of it, right, the more, if you look at the structure and the way we have designed this, week one is ideation, where for the entire week, through the different master classes, we actually make every single builder an idea machine. Now what that does is, it would, you would start coming up with ideas. We don't want to restrict you to come up with ideas with that can, let's say, only get built with no code. That's bullshit, right? Like, I should have the freedom to come up with ideas that I would want to and love to see, like, exist in the world. Now, because people have that freedom, and then we have set up this community that if, let's say, you come up with an idea, you are a non-developer, then there would be a developer who would, put up his or her hand to collaborate with you to ensure that your side project gets shipped, right? Now that is so important. Otherwise, we would just say, okay, think of ideas that are based on this no code tool. Then you're playing a tool game, right? You're not enabling people to think of innovative, creative, wacky, ideas that can actually take over the world. If it has to, it can start a side project, but at least give people that freedom, right? And that is why this kind of intentionality is there when it comes to selecting, if I can use that word, yeah, selecting people.
Makes sense. This is amazing, and you're on the third cohort now, which gets started either end of October or first week of November. Prashant's going to decide that. The applications for that are open right now, so go check out the build page. We'll put it in the show notes. Check it out, and if you always wanted to start a side project, I can't think of a better way to get started. So go join that the cohort. Perfect.
Thank you
With
so much.
that, Yeah, with that, we'll move on to the next segment, which is the business munchie segment. One idea each. The restriction or the constraint that we have this time is it can't be any of the rants that I go into about market research and how big a business can be. This has to be strictly side project, because we're talking about side projects, something that people can do with their full time work. Who wants to get started? Sahil, Prashant, who wants to get
I
started?
think let the guest go first, right? Prashant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can go first. Definitely, and just before we get there, Siddharth and Sahil, right? Like, people tend to, and I'm glad that you outlined it, right? Like, side project ideas. When it comes to thinking of side project ideas, the process doesn't necessarily have to be very different, even if you were to think about a business idea, right? Like, you need to have a very keen, sharp mind that observes problems. That is something that actually I do a masterclass on in week one, which is like, how do you ingrain in people's mind that there is a way to observe the world, your own life, your society's life, your everything, right? Because once you become really good with observation, you'll see that ideas just keep striking your mind, and the smaller the idea, the higher the chances that you will actually build on it. The the higher the chances that the problem is something that you are facing, more the chances that you will build it. So, and I just wanted to ensure that before we get started, that understanding is clear when it comes to what we meant when we said side project. So, there's so many. In fact, one of the things that can be built very quickly a side project is all of these OTTs have taken over the world, or taken over, let's say, the Indian this thing scene as well, in terms of the content that people are consuming, tier one, tier two cities. But obviously there are people who have tried to build like show recommendations and show reviews for all of these OTT shows that comes up, but nobody has actually cracked it, right? There is an open space for somebody to build a very quick side project, right? Take all of these content, like if you see, go on Twitter, you will see that a lot of people actually, like very accomplished people, ask what should I watch next, which is a side project idea, right? Like, what should you watch? You can actually name it, what should you watch? Mhm.
Yeah.
And then just build it, right? And I was saying build it based on the views that people are having, because those data is easily available. Like, just like something that I would love to build sometime. Yeah.
uh, Going on Netflix gives me anxiety, right? If I don't know what I'm going to be watching, it gives me anxiety that I'm going to be spending 20, 30 minutes just trying to figure out what I'm going to be watching and then give up and do something
Yeah.
else, right? So
Yeah.
that one reason itself has reduced the time that I spend on OTTs. If it's a
Yeah.
show that everybody is recommending, it's on Twitter, I will go watch it. If it's not, I don't even open OTTs anymore.
Dude, Siddharth,
Correct.
there've been so many dinners that me and my wife will sit down to watch Netflix along with dinner. I'll start scrolling and then we'll finish dinner by the time we find something to watch. But on that note, you guys should watch Squid Game. It's a great show. Anyway,
Yeah,
Siddharth.
exactly.
Absolutely.
The other
The
thing,
thing is,
yeah,
the thing that just Sahil just said, right? This is the actual way in which we are watching the the series or anything that we are actually watching on OTTs, right? Like, oh, Sahil told me this, so I'll watch it because I feel that Sahil's taste is good, right? uh, like, you can build a platform on taste, on genres, on
yeah,
what people are recommending on social, right? Let's just pick Twitter. Okay, these people have recommended this show.
yeah.
I can decide because, oh, I relate a lot with Naval and Balaji, and okay, these people are recommending, so I'll watch what Naval, Balaji, etc., are recommending. But I'll not necessarily watch, let's say, what journalists are recommending, because their tastes are different.
Yeah. And you can add that layer of couples trying to find a show that works for both of them, right? That's the other problem. Just get two profiles on and just say, this is probably a show that you both should agree on, given your previous history or given whatever. Because that's the other thing. I want to watch this, I don't want to watch this, and then the time goes away.
Yeah.
One of the ways this is being solved for, we actually know this is my batchmate from ISB, Jitin, who started something called as Curators, where his sort of promise is there's just so much content that it's impossible to figure out what to consume. So I'm going to build a curation layer on top of it with like curation experts, right? People who are into sci-fi movies are going to be curating sci-fi movies. People who are into XYZ are going to be curating that kind of content. So that's one way to solve it. There's also a technologically sort of technology way to solve it, which is just pulling data from different social media and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no,
Yeah.
absolutely. In fact, I have also seen, I may not be able to recall the names of those platforms, but I've totally seen a few here and there when it comes to people actually trying to take a dig at it. But there will be ones. one startup or a side project, right? Something that starts out a side project that becomes like the IMDb of the OTT world, right? And it's a no-brainer that there will be one platform which will be IMDb of the OTT world, right?
Yeah, go ahead, Sai.
No, there's a much simpler problem that also needs to be solved. Is that sometimes you know exactly what you want to watch, but you don't know where it is. That's happened to me a lot
Yeah,
as well, and that's a much simpler problem to solve. All you have to do
yeah,
is you have to have an updated list of what shows and what movies are on which OTT platform, and just update it for India. I've
Yeah,
found this for the US, but I've never found this for India.
yeah.
very interesting. I love that. Yeah, I love that. In fact, yeah, that's a very low hanging fruit for a side project, right?
Yeah, because what happens is it's available in the US Netflix. You go to Netflix, you keep searching for it, and you realize, oh, not in India.
No, but so the thing is that these kind of like lists and curation and all of this, people might think like, oh, it's such a small thing. Why would I care? These kind of websites can end up earning a lot of revenue. Like you look at
Yeah,
something as simple as Coin Market Watch, which is just has like
yeah,
the Bitcoin prices or crypto prices, and they're earning millions because it's just a simple ticker. And there are
Yeah.
so
yeah,
So
many websites like that.
there's this guy Ramon Weir, based out of San Francisco. Not comes doesn't come from the tech world or anything like that. He landed on this opportunity of building a content website for the daily soaps that used to come on the US television, right? So he just built a content website where there were episode descriptions. You could go to the details of what like episodes were, all of that just on daily soaps, and made millions of that content website because you could drive so much traffic. And this is, I'm just going to share this. I don't watch 90% of the shows. If I've started it, and if they're not up to the mark, all I do for my curiosity is just go to Wikipedia or go to one of the websites and read episode descriptions, right? Whatever
yeah,
happened in the episode in 5 minutes, I'm done. I can't sit for 1 hour. And I'm assuming there are a lot more people who want to be updated in that sense, and that could be a content
yeah.
website in itself. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic, right? And that's here you go, right? One side project, anybody who wants to pick it up, run with it. Just to give an example, there was a side project suggestion in the cohort by one of our mentors, just like how we are talking right now. The one of the builders actually picked that idea up, shipped it. They have ended up making more than $2,000 in 10 days, right?
Wow, that's
With that
fantastic.
idea.
This is
So
this is
people just
LetterHunt,
need to
right? This is
yeah,
LetterHunt.
yeah. This
Yeah,
is LetterHunt. Yeah.
I was checking Slack yesterday. As Sahil said, it's been less than 24 hours, but I was also on the community, and LetterHunt is a fantastic idea for people who don't know what LetterHunt is. Newsletter curation, basically. At the end of the day, we are talking about OTT curation. New LetterHunt helps you figure out the right newsletters for you. So go check that out. Okay, we'll move on to the next idea.
I have one.
I Okay, go for it.
Okay. Before I get into the idea, I have a question for you guys. You've heard of Wadham Teas, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Wadham Teas just raised, I think, around 150 crores in funding, right? And they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
I think, about 100-ish crores of revenue as well. Um, Question for you guys is, how much of their revenue do you think is export?
Because I know this, I think it's more than 50%.
Or what do
I've
you say,
read this
Prashant?
somewhere.
70%, 70%.
I think it's more than around 80-ish percentage. Okay.
More
Yeah.
than 80.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm not surprised because even like T-Box, right? Like T-Box has the same model. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the thing is that all these D2C companies that are coming up in India, they have fantastic products and they are able to build great quality. I've seen some great quality D2C products in India, but the problem is the Indian market is still limited in the amount of money that people are willing to pay and the number of people who can pay that much. The export market opens up the universe so much more. So just what happened yesterday, I think it was, I had a chat with a guy who works for a really well-funded D2C startup. Okay, in the food and beverages space, think about something like a yoga bar or Whole Truth Foods or something like that. In the same realm as those products, his job was to answer the question: how do I take this product international? How do I start exports for this product? Because we know that there's a huge export potential, and he was so confused and he came to me and we had a chat about it. Okay, he was not very confused, but he had questions. He came to me and we had a long chat about it. I answered a lot of questions about logistics to him, about how to do logistics for D2C and all of that stuff. Now, here's my idea. There are a lot of D2C companies in India that have the potential to go international. But the things that are holding them back is A, they don't know the logistics, B, they don't know the regulations, C, they don't know the
Documentation, the compliance.
documentation, the compliance. I mean, there are many different things. In fact, the last episode that we did, which was about buying a US company and was also about how to start a US company, I recommended this guy to go listen to that episode, because he was like, I don't want to I don't want to start a US company. I was like, it's super simple. It takes 1 month. You can just do it. So the idea is basically either create a resource thing about like, here's all the resources that you need to to do D2C export, or start a services business on the side that is giving the services of taking these D2C companies international, or have a updated resource of the people who can help you with that. So, for example, if you want legal help on how to start a US company, talk to this guy. If you want logistics help, talk to this guy. If you want this thing help, talk to this guy. Yeah, that is the idea.
I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
this has broader implications in the sense that this is also applicable to a lot of SMEs in the country. Might not be brands, but these are manufacturers who can potentially tap into the export market, but just don't know how to. So you could technically handhold them also if you do the services bit of it.
But
Yeah.
I want to focus on the D2C side. I'll tell you why. Because D2C is more direct. I mean, it's one-on-one with customers. It doesn't have like C shipments, because C shipments have very different logistics. And when you're pigeonholing yourself in a niche, you'll be able to capture a lot more customers in that niche rather than going too broad. Because
I
then
agree.
there's already so much resources on how to export and how to do shipping and all that stuff.
Also D2C companies in India are funded, so you can actually get paid well compared to the SMEs who are not going to pay you that well.
Yeah, and just because we said that, if I, like if someone was to think of this as a side project, right? If you just said that, I think it was yesterday that you were talking to a friend who asked you questions, and you also suggested that go and watch this podcast, which probably had some content, good content around suggestions. Like the lowest hanging fruit for someone, if you were to build this side project, is the information curation, because information curation is a big deal, right? Especially in niches. You pick D2C, so you are saying D2C who wants to go international, they have this information gap, right? They don't know, okay, the logistics involved, the regulations involved, blah 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 blah, so many other things. You kind of put all of those together, because if you were to, like, if I were to do this as a side project on the service with, along with service, then I will get caught in that tangle of, oh, I need to now bring these people, that people, okay, I need a lawyer. Then I may not ever actually launch it. You kind of put out the information, start sharing it out with people who need this information. They get more interested. Then they ask you for the next set of help. Like, can you get me in touch with a lawyer? Oh yeah, yeah. There's a lawyer. Then it automatically transitions into service, right? So that is how I would approach it, right? If I were to build
100%.
this.
It's one of those things that can easily start as a side project and become a main hustle very easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Very interesting side.
Thank you. I completely agree with you, Prashant, on the information curation being the first piece. Even when I was saying it, I was like, oh, yeah, that can be just it. Like taking what Siddharth said last time and just making it into a newsletter, putting that
Yeah.
as a blog, and then finding other blogs and putting it there. And the thing is,
Yeah.
you'll have to do it differently for different niches, because there are so many F&B D2C companies. So first, you'll have to start with F&B
Compliance.
regulations in the US, then F&B regulation in Europe, F&B regulation in Australia. You can go into a lot of detail, and it will help a lot of people. And I think it
Yeah.
can drive a lot of traffic if you do it properly.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. I
makes
complete.
sense.
I love this idea. I hope that you were a part of the cohort also. We would have shipped this.
We'll do it in cohort 3. We'll do it in cohort 3.
Done. Done.
We'll put
Yeah.
this idea out, and hopefully somebody will do it. Let's
Yeah.
see.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I'm on the hot seat now. Okay, so
Yes.
this goes back years, and this is a nagging sort of thought that I've had since I was working at a startup back in 2016-17, where the culture was such that every Monday or every sort of Friday night we would ship a presentation which was analytics for that particular department, right? So this would be tech, this would be marketing, sales, customer success. What has everybody done? That goes out to the entire company. So these were metrics pre-decided. and week on week, what is the movement, right? So this creates transparency, this creates accountability. You can see the movement,
Yeah.
you can build momentum, stuff like that. Now, this is
Yeah.
very commonplace in companies, right? The tracking of analytics and stuff like that. This is not common at all when it comes to our own personal lives, right? When it comes to our own personal lives, it's just up in the air. Like there's just like you don't know how your health is being developed or how
There's
your
there's
financial
there's
resources are being.
there's 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 no OKRs, no measurement, no reviews, nothing, right?
Nothing, exactly. There's
Yeah.
absolutely nothing, which in my mind is like this doesn't make any sense.
Wait. Now I'm just imagining Nitika, Siddharth's wife, sitting down with him and being like, okay, for the month, for Q3, we had decided your weight is going to go down from 65 to 63. You're currently at 64. I can only give you a salary of this much. Sorry, but
Yeah. Third thing will be, Siddharth, now you will only get two times food, right? Like you didn't deliver last quarter, you missed your goals.
Yeah, so I absolutely love the exaggeration, but honestly, it is needed. It is needed for some of the things that we do in our lives. It's absolutely needed. And now what I'm talking about is most of this data sits online somewhere, right? Your health is now tracked on your watches, on your phones. Your financial resources are being tracked on these dashboards. Your content that you consume, how you spend your time, your screen time is all recorded. Why can't all of this automatically through APIs be brought into one sort of app or one dashboard that you start your week planning with by saying that, hey, my and this goes back to something that I am deeply inspired by, what Balaji says, right? Health, wealth, and truth. These are the three sort of pillars that you need to live by, and all of these things can be tracked very easily now. It's not like you have to build tech to track it. You just have to bring it in one place, put it in a way which is presentable. And I recently heard this episode by I forget the guy, Rob, I think that was his name, but My First Million recently posted an episode this week. This guy tracks everything about his life. For the last 5 years, he's been tracking every single thing about his life, how he spends his time, where he spends his time, stuff like that. And he spoke in detail about how that's had a profound impact in how he lives, right? Now all I'm
Hmm.
saying is some way to track your personal metrics that are important to you and sort of automate that process.
question about this guy Rob. When you say it had a profound impact on his life, what was the profound impact? Was it on his productivity, or what was the profound impact?
I think his end goal was, I want to just be happy, right? And I want to go back and track what makes me happy. What are the things that make me happy, so that I do more of that and less of the things that don't make me happy, right? Which includes the
Yeah.
fact that you have to be healthy and money is a part of it and all of that, right? So he talks about it a little bit, but the personal dashboarding aspect is something that because I saw like company dashboards and I'm like, hey, why does this not exist? The next layer of this, the social element of this, right? If you build like a private social network, just 4 5 7 people that I'm like very good friends with, or family that I'm very open with, they can also hold me accountable by saying that, hey, my goal this in this quarter or in this year is to do this, and the metrics show if I've done it or not.
Yeah, no, very interesting, right? Like the only few things, right? It is something that can also be run as a startup, right? Like it feels it almost gives that whole vibe that, oh, there's so much of scope in the product. You can keep building on top of it. It can become a full blown like a startup in itself. I'll give an example of a builder who actually thought about something in a little shorter way, and he's building that. So what he's saying is, if you look at the habit building process between a parent and a child, right, in today's date, it's almost like bribing, right? Like, oh yeah, do this. And now he's like, okay, I'll create an interface, app or something between a child and this thing. The parent sets the goal, the child can also decide the reward. I was
Nice.
like right, like, because this thing is already there, right? This idea of habit forming between a parent and a child is already there, but the rewards and something is, the parent thinks, okay, I'll give, you come first, I'll give this, or you learn this, I'll give that. You suddenly build a interface where the parent can decide, the child can decide. The child is so much more motivated. Oh, I've decided the reward for something like this, right? And then I'll go and achieve that. So what I'm trying to say is, one is, we can cut down the scope a little more,
Yeah,
like when it comes to the
100%.
problem that you are saying. And two is, just like, do people, for example, I measure, or all of us measure so many things already in our professionals lives, right? It has to be very gamified and fun, etc. Otherwise you're measuring so much your personal life. If everything is getting measured in your professional life, people would become very like these,
Robotic.
like very robotic, right? And yeah, so that's where I would say we may want to think a little more, how does it become fun, or how does it become
Yeah, I agree.
wacky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
So,
gamification is extremely important.
okay, now as somebody who has measured a lot of their lives, like I used to measure how much I ate, slept, ran, to a very like minute detail. It can cause a lot of stress, and it was the
Yeah.
reason why I stopped doing a lot of the activities that I used to love doing. I stopped running because I used to measure it to so much detail that it just caused me so much stress that it just was not fun anymore. And I came to this realization after doing it for several years that oftentimes you just do stuff for the sake of doing it, and you don't, everything does not have to be measured, everything does not have
Yeah.
to be done to a certain way, everything does not have to be um, it's okay if you're not productive. It's
Yeah.
okay
Quick.
if you didn't do everything perfectly. It's okay if
I
your health
think
is not the best. But it's better that you're happy than you're stressed.
I
I
think I
agree.
agree with Sahil's line of thinking, and also there, I think that's where awareness can be a side project, right? So if I'm aware with whatever is happening in my life, then if it goes, so for example, Apple Watch works like that, right? Or any health tracker works like that. It keeps you aware of whatever is happening in your body, so that if there's a red flag, then so it's not asking you to measure all the time,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Or meet goals. It's just keeping you aware that this is what is happening. If there's a red flag, then you can take a corrective. I think that approach can also work for personal goals, etc. I'm not sure how,
100%.
but yeah.
100%. And I completely agree, Sahil. I think it's the minute details that sort of create more stress. You have to keep it very high level that you worked out 20 times this month, right? Because I think that level of information is important to create that awareness that you are working out, you are meeting your financial goals. This is what you save, this is what you spend. Those kind of information at a very high level, I think, can have a positive impact, but there's a very thin line of like going down the rabbit hole and actually going too deep and getting stressed about it.
I think we also need to
Yeah.
measure how much Prashant is petting his dog, because I can hear his dog whining in the background. Clearly, because Prashant is not petting his dog enough.
No, no, because she has climbed on the sofa and then she's like, now how do I get down? So that's her way of calling, right? Like, please come, put me down. So I'll go when this is over.
Another interesting story on this tracking thing. Jim Collins, this guy who wrote Good to Great and a couple of other bestsellers, right? So he talks about a very simple way of tracking. He's like, I don't do anything fancy for the last 7, 8, 10 years, or a long period of time. He's like, I have an Excel sheet where I rate my day from -2 to +2, right? Like very self-explanatory. -2 being a very bad day, +2 being an absolutely great day. And he's like, I just write like a small description on why was it good or why was it bad. And he's like, that data, just that simple data, has been able, like I've been able to now customize my life to be more plus ones and plus twos, because I know what it takes to be in that zone, right? Whenever I spend time with family or certain people, I'm in that range, versus whenever I do XYZ, I'm not in that range. So that's another very simple way of tracking and actually using data to improve your quality of life.
I think this goes back to what Prashant was saying about awareness. Um, Earlier
Yeah.
this year, I wrote a diary for a couple of weeks. Obviously, I didn't keep up with it, but while I was writing the diary, I realized that my self awareness shot up through the roof. And just doing what Jim Collins was doing, the act of writing that down builds that awareness, which lets you know what you need to do. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think last idea that I have is
Yeah.
just stock photos of Prashant as an IT guy, and selling those online. And I think we will make millions off of that side project, because he looks like the perfect IT guy right now.
The headphone here is the IT symbol, right? This one. Yeah.
The mic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The mic, sorry.
Oh my
Yeah. The
God.
mic is the
For
IT
We
symbol.
we
the
got
for
this
the
for the sales team, and I'm so proud that it can now become a side project.
for for whoever's just listening on the podcast and can't see, basically Prashant has the perfect, like, the headphones over the ears and the mic that's coming right in front of his mouth, so he can speak to you and be like,
It
hello
happens to
sir, what
me.
can I help you with?
happens to be Indian, right? So that
and happens
adds
to
up
be
to
Indian.
the, yeah.
And glasses.
Yes,
And
and
glasses also.
yes, I can always help people with side projects so that they know my answer in advance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
No,
I think
this was great, Prashant. As we spoke about earlier, we'd love to collaborate with Build, sponsor some prize money for builders there, help out as many builders as we can, and even throw out some of the side projects that I would like to actively work on. So I'm excited to be part of the community, and let's do something together. Love what you're building. Absolutely necessary.
Oh, thank you so much, Siddharth and Sahil. I think one, you guys are already there in the community, so you will start seeing as people or as builders are getting to the launch week next and beyond that, you will see so much more action and so much more excitement and hype building around. So that's one. You will be able to experience it first, and definitely doing something together, right? That goes without saying. I think we have spoken about that earlier. We'll ensure that we are able to work together. Pretty excited because like no one has kind of thought about side projects in this way till now, at least the way we are done it for the last two cohorts. And I'm excited. I'm also excited to see where it goes from here. Coming to the last point which you said, we are actually launching something around the lines of people like there's Ryan Hoover, like, there's there's so many other people who have ideas but they don't necessarily have the bandwidth and mostly time and bandwidth to execute on them. So we're building like a platform which is launching next Wednesday, right? Where people will be able to put up their ideas, put a bounty, and the builders will ship it, right? So yeah, that's also coming up.
Ooh, that's
nice.
amazing. That'll be lovely.
I,
Yeah.
Another side project that Siddharth and I have to do is fly to Bangalore and get your dog off the couch because she's complaining so much.
Yeah. She's like, when is your podcast going to get over?
Perfect. Now is the time. All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Prashant. Thank you so much for taking the time out and sharing your journey with Build and sharing the side project ideas. Good luck with everything, and hope multiple more cohorts happen. It doesn't get limited to 3, 4 cohorts like you said.
Oh, no, absolutely. Thank you so much, Sahil and Siddharth. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I hope the listeners would have fun listening to this.